Welcome to Friday night's live stream. I'm going to take a minute to let everybody know that the live stream is starting, and I'll be ready to get started in a minute. Sup, J-Dog, sup, Yak Diesel. Gonna get ready to get this live stream started in a minute. And tonight's topic is going to be me talking about this Captain Marvel movie, the strong woman narrative, and I'm gonna be talking about the upcoming, well, the currently going on ISIS graphic novel, Indiegogo. Now, I'm going to talk about the Indiegogo first. Now, I launched the ISIS graphic novel Indiegogo this Tuesday, March 5th, because this was the week that Captain Marvel was opening up at all of these theaters. And many comic fans out there, they have been complaining about this Captain Marvel character ever since she came out about 4 or 5 years ago. And after reading the comic books myself, I can honestly say I agree with them in their having their issues with this Captain Marvel. And the reason why I agree with them about their grievances with this Captain Marvel movie is because after reading several issues of this Captain Marvel, the most recent run, I can easily see all of the identity politics that is featured in your Captain Marvel comic, and I can see why the character just isn't appealing to comic fans out there. So I understand why people just don't like this character and why this character just has not connected with readers in the comic book world. But what's really baffling to me is how your Marvel Studios decided to go out here and make this character the lead of her own movie, even though she does not have an audience, because with each passing Captain Marvel reboot, her audience continues to decline over time. And I'm looking at this from a business perspective as a publisher, and I ask myself, why would you continue to keep relaunching this character? I mean, in the trade publishing world, if a character just isn't connecting with readers, usually a trade publisher, what they're going to do, if they look at the sales numbers, is say, this isn't working, and then go out here and decide not to continue publishing this because they're losing money. Unfortunately, Rosanna Amanat, who was the vice president of Marvel, is more caught up in promoting identity politics and pushing a white feminist narrative over at Marvel instead of trying to generate sales. And this is one of the reasons why Marvel has been in a serious state of decline over the last 4 or 5 years now, is because they would rather push identity politics rather than give the customer what they want. And what people have shown is that they are just not interested in this Captain Marvel. Hi, Rapper 1000. Hey, D. Woodward. What's up, Tony Myers? I'll get to your question in a minute. Rotten Tomatoes has deleted, 50,000 reviews. I heard about that, and that's just censorship. They just keep trying to, oh, hi, Christopher Clipper, too, and Dark Void. It really shows how, gynocentrism controls our media, the way they're censoring all these reviews and deleting these reviews. They're calling them Russian bots, and they're calling them trolls. And again, this is not Russian bots or trolls. This is people expressing their opinions regarding a film, which I saw problems with as regarded to the initial teaser trailer and the original trailer, where I saw what a lot of reviewers are now seeing was bland, uninspired visuals and a very weak story. So those are the two things I saw just from the trailers, which are supposed to be the best part of the movie. And then after I read the synopsis, I really got deeply disappointed with this film, because clearly there was no story as related to this film. And it was all about, again, as I've talked about in the other 2 live streams I did talking about writing strong heroines, and writing these SJW heroines, is they try to insulate the hero by making them avoid any sort of conflict or adversity. And when you do that, you're not going to be able to generate any sort of momentum for your movie, because when it comes down to the whole heroine's journey, this is a big problem a lot of writers have. Now, I have a lot of experience writing heroines because I write heroines in books like the ISIS series and the East-Team series. This is the most recent East-Team series book that is now available in paperback on Amazon. And I also write heroines in fiction like Spinsterella. So I have a lot of experience in writing heroines, and I write heroines so well, some readers tell me that they're surprised that a man could write a heroine that was that good. So I've gotten a lot of praise for writing heroines. And when I look at what they've done with Captain Marvel, it's clear to me that they just don't have the right model. Now, this was the big problem that Marvel had. They wanted to push this whole idea of a female lead, but they just didn't have the right story model. And that's why the comic book Captain Marvel has struggled for years. And that's why the movie right now is struggling right now, because as it relates to Marvel and Disney, they are trying so desperately to give you this strong heroine based on a feminist story model. And because they are applying a feminist story model, this is why the character just isn't connecting with male audiences and why it's not connecting with female audiences. Now, when it comes down to male audiences and female audiences, they want a heroine and they want a story with the heroine's journey. But what they want is a character that they can form a relationship with. And it's hard to form a relationship with your Captain Marvel based on what I read in the synopsis for it, because they just don't give you anything to connect with. Take a minute. What's up, Omeo? Glad to see you here. Yeah, those are my Voltron Deluxes in the back, Sean S. I've had those since 1988. I've had the Lion Force since 87. And I've had the vehicle team and the Albigas since 88. So I've had them for over 30 years. So those are part of my collection. And I'm going to answer a question here. Tony Myers asks, what do I think about the Disney-Fox merger and the effects of the future? I think Disney's going to be in a lot of trouble because Disney they took out a lot of loans to buy Fox's assets. And what they don't understand is that their assets are depreciating at this point. A lot of the stuff they have in their catalog is old. And I think it's a big mistake because now they are a larger, bloated company and they're not able to adapt and they're not going to be able to maneuver and be competitive. They're just going to be a really bloated company that will, like Disney in the 70s was, bloated. Now, if you research Disney in the 70s, you'll see that it, again, was a very bloated company and it was stuck doing a lot of archaic ideas and a lot of archaic concepts. And that's what kept the studio from being competitive. And back then they started producing a lot of bombs like Your Black Cauldron and many other films that just weren't strong. Now, when it comes down to this Captain Marvel, it looks like Disney made a huge mistake. And the reason why, again, I say they made a huge mistake is because they made this film, as I see it, out of desperation. They saw Wonder Woman do very well at the box office, and they wanted some of that success for themselves. But the big problem was they just didn't focus on the right things. Now, they did have two heroines they could have made films around, but they felt they weren't strong enough. They had Scarlet Witch, who was an organic part of the Avengers, and they had Black Widow, and they also had the Wasp. But I guess they thought those heroines weren't strong enough to carry a film on their own. But as I see it, sometimes you just have to take a risk and see if it works. But what they did with this whole Captain Marvel thing was they went out here and promoted this feminist agenda. They promoted this idea that she was going to come out here and beat Thanos. And then they wanted to try to shoehorn her into the Marvel Cinematic Universe continuity. And that was a real insult to many comic fans out there and MCU fans out there, because you have all these 10 years comic fans have been watching this film and MCU fans have been watching these films, and you're going to have this character come out of nowhere and be some sort of Mary Sue and some sort of Deus Ex Machina. And what that was doing was going to emasculate all of the heroes. So that's a real turnoff to a lot of comic fans, and that's not the way you would want to end your Marvel Cinematic Universe. So Endgame's momentum, I feel, is going to be stumbling out of the gate because you decided to put this character in here, and it's just not going to have a positive impact, because I believe it's going to dampen the impact. Yeah, it'll make some money this weekend, but I believe the drop-off is going to come in the second weekend, and it may wind up hurting the Avengers Endgame in the long run. So that's where I see things with this Captain Marvel movie. As I saw it for the trailer, I said, this film is just not strong enough, and I would, if I were an executive at Marvel Studios, I would have never greenlit this film and just let Endgame stand on its own, let it build its own momentum, and be its own film. Now, that film I also have issues with some of the things in it, but the whole thing is that Marvel Studios put the whole farm on this character. Unfortunately, again, the big problem with this character has to do with the way she is written. And the way she is written is, again, a big problem, because when it comes down to a character, as I talked about in previous live streams, we have to form a relationship with this character. We have to like this character, and we have to care about this character. One of the things I learned writing heroines in books like Isis, Samurai Goddess, and Eve Team Goddess of, and books like Spinsterella, was that when you're writing a heroine, they have to be someone that the reader likes. The reader has to see this character as a friend. And the reason why you want the readers to see the character as a friend is because when the reader picks up this book, what happens is they are going to spend time with this character. And if you want people to spend time with this character and continue reading the story, then you have to make this character someone they can feel like is a friend to them. And one of the problems with Captain Marvel is she isn't a friend to the reader. And that's one of the big problems with this character, is you never feel like you can be a friend of this character. And this is one of the reasons why the character sells so poorly, is because she doesn't come across as somebody you would want to be friends with. She doesn't come across as somebody you would want to spend time with. And because she doesn't come across as someone you would want to be friends with or would want to spend time with, guess what? That doesn't give you a reason to go out here and spend money on a Captain Marvel comic book, or to spend even more money on a Captain Marvel movie. So when you create a character like this, who, as I see in the comics that I have read, she comes across as very rude, very abrasive. She comes across as very mean-spirited. This is why people just don't like this character. And she spends more time talking about how she's such a strong woman that she turns people completely off. And that's something you don't want to do when you have a character and when you're presenting them in a story medium. Because when it comes down to comic books and fantasy, you want the character to be a friend to the reader, because when the reader wants to escape. Because I remember being a kid who was being bullied in junior high school, I would look forward to the Fridays when I would go get my comics, because they would provide me with some comfort or give me a way to spend a few minutes, you know, getting away from the high pressures of junior high school and high school. So a lot of people, what they want, they get a comic, they want to have that minute of escape. They want that break. And when it comes down to this Captain Marvel character, she never allows you to break away. Instead, she throws a problem at you from the real world, and that's something that turns you off. I remember looking at the most recent first two issues, and the first issue was all about her taking on this patriarchy or this misogynist, and I didn't want to see that. I wanted to see your Captain Marvel, you know, use her powers in a creative fashion to take on a bad guy. And I wanted to see her show that she had learned and changed from the previous 5 reboots. And I didn't get to see that in those issues. And that was an issue I had with the first issue. And the second issue was a complete and utter mess, because when she went through the portal to the apocalyptic thing, we saw that there was no hope and no change for the book. The book fell completely apart in the second issue. Now, over the last 10, 15 years, again, I've been writing heroines, and that's one of the reasons why I decided to come out here with the Isis graphic novel. Now, originally, when I created the Isis character back in 1999, I originally planned for the character to be a comic book character. Unfortunately, the industry was in a bad place and my finances were in a bad place. But so I wound up writing it as a novel, and then as in 2012, in the 10th anniversary of ISIS, I finally got to do the ISIS series I originally planned to do. I decided to start it then. And with that whole concept, I always thought about making the character a friend to the reader. And that's where I came up with the whole concept of the goddess next door. And the whole concept of the goddess next door is that Isis is a friend to the community, and she goes where she's needed to go out here and help people. And after writing 15 ISIS books, after I started to learn how to write comics, as I started to work with Bill Walko on designing the covers for ISIS series books. And Bill Walko is the artist of the critically acclaimed webcomic, The Hero Business, and he was the man who penciled the Stan Lee tribute. And he has been drawing my ISIS series covers ever since 2012. He does covers like this one for Samurai Goddess, and he also does covers for my other books, like the East-Team series. He did this one for Goddess of, and he did this one for East-Team Ascension, and he did this cover for ISIS All That Glitters, the story that the Indiegogo comic will be based on. So the Indiegogo comic is going to be based on this story, All That Glitters, which is already available in paperback if you want to read the story. And the script is on my blog as well, the first 10 pages. And I really want to make this comic because as it relates to Comicsgate, a lot of people have complained again about comics like Captain Marvel and the poor quality of the writing. And when I read comics like your Captain Marvel, your Unstoppable Wasp, and your Squirrel Girl and Kamala Khan Ms. Marvel, I see where they made the mistakes. And I want to show you a positive example of what it is to be a strong heroine. And I want to show you a model for storytelling that is more fresh and compelling than what your SJW Marvel or your DC is currently producing, or your Vertigo is producing as related to heroines with this Indiegogo. Now, I need to raise about $25,000 in order to get this comic, the money to publish this comic. And the budget for this comic goes as follows. I need about $9,300 to pay Bill Walko to do the interiors for All That Glitters. So the art you see on this cover is going to be in the book, and that's a fixed cost. Bill's he's gonna do a lot of work on this, and it would be definitely worth it. And after the $9,300, I need about $4,000 or $5,000 to hire a colorist to color the pages, and they usually charge $80 to $100. And I also need to hire a letterer and a proofreader, and I also need to pay the printing and shipping cost for all those books. I'm going to get to a point. Edward Gaines says $9,300 for 62 pages. Yes, it's $9,300 for 62 pages because the ISIS graphic novel will feature 2 stories, ISIS All That Glitters, which is the main story, and Easting No Good Deed. And when it comes down to those 2 stories, they revolve around the theme of everyday superheroes and everyday superheroes fighting crime. Now, this is something I wanted to do because when it comes down to superheroes these days, we don't get to see them in the community, and we don't get to see them connecting with people. Kev Morris asks, are these for kids or adults? When it comes down to this graphic novel, it's all ages. So anybody from 8 to 80 years old can read them. And I'm about to put the link, Hugh, to the All That Glitters Indiegogo up in a minute, if I can, because YouTube. Here it is. I have to put the link to the Indiegogo up in the box. So that's going to be there. And my stories, again, they are all ages. Every book that I write in the ISIS and E-Steam series, they are all ages. And I've had people as young as 7 or 8 pick these books up, and I've had people as old as 65 pick these books up. And I've had many people say that my books are just like comic books. And this is what I want to do. I want to be able to take these type of stories and turn them into comics. So that's something I want to do with this graphic novel. And I want to make a book that, again, is all about action and adventure, and again shows you what a strong heroine is, because in most of my novels, like Spinsterella and Legendary Mad Matilda, I show you strong heroines, and I show you that they have strength from their internal character, not their powers, because I believe that the power a heroine has comes from within. It comes from who they are on the inside, and it's because they empower themselves from the inside. That's what shows how powerful they are on the outside. So that's what I want to do with this Indiegogo. I want to be able to give you a really fun, fresh, and exciting comic book, a comic book that all ages can read, and you can feel comfortable about sharing with your family, because that's what I usually do with the ISIS series. I want to give you that all ages, family friendly, fun type of story. And a lot of people really enjoy ISIS series stories, and I want to bring that experience to comics. Omeo asks, how quickly will the book take to get ready? I'm going to try to get this done by the end of the year if I can get it funded. I've already talked to Bill about this, and Bill works pretty fast. I mean, he worked very fast on that piece for the Stan Lee tribute, and we'll see what happens. The things that I have to work out of logistics for the colorist. I was talking to a letterer on Facebook, but I'm going to try to get this out sooner rather than later, because I usually work on a schedule, and usually I try to get my books out for the 2 time periods. I try to get them out for the spring schedule, and I try to get them out for the fall schedule, because in trade publishing, it works like this. Usually you want to get your books out before March, and the reason why you want to get your books out before March is because that's when the summer reading season starts, and the summer reading season is where people buy most of their books for their summer vacations or their spring vacations. And when you get your books out then, you can get a major audience then. You also want to get them out for the holiday season, because at Christmas time, you have a lot of people buying books with gift cards, and you also have a lot of people buying books for Christmas. So usually around November to December, you have people buying books for Christmas. And then usually from January to about March, you have a lot of people buying books with their gift cards that they got from Barnes & Noble and Amazon. So you want to capitalize on those 2 major periods for sales. And I usually capitalize on those then. And that's the reason why I have the 2 books in the SJS Direct 2019 catalog out on paperback right now, and they'll be available in ebook format. And like All That Glitters it will be available in ebook later this March, and you can pre-order it now. And E-Steam Goddess of will be out in April. So I usually keep all my books on a tight schedule, and I usually get my books out fairly quickly. So I know how to get a book out and turn it over very quickly. So you will be able to get a book if I can get the project funded. So I move very quickly on my projects, and I have confidence I can get this one through. I'm going to try to read through some of the commentary. I did see the trailer for Shazam. It looks like a lot of fun. I may have to go out and go see that one. And I read about how they did Monica Rambeau, and I wasn't happy about that at all. They just completely buried her. And Rapper 1000 asked, Yeah, I've heard about what Rotten Tomatoes does with certain movies, and I see what they did with Captain Marvel, and it's not going to really help that movie in the long term. What's going to happen with the movie is what's happening right now. People are getting alienated, people are getting turned off, and people are getting upset about that because what they're doing is trying to censor people so that they won't be able to critique this movie. And that's not right to do. I mean, if Halle Berry, an Academy Award winner, could take criticism about this movie, then you would think Brie Larson and Marvel Studios would be able to take the exact same criticism about this movie. Devon, this, I'm going to try to move. Um, those are Voltron Deluxes in the back. And again, they're 30 years old. I've had them ever since I was a teenager. And that's what those are in the background. I was talking about what they're doing with Captain Marvel, and I'm not a fan of censorship because once you put a piece of art out there, a piece of literature out there, you have to just let it stand, and that's something you just have to do. Once I put a story out there, I just let it stand, and that's what I do. I'm not that big in the Mega Man. I never really was. What's up, E-Deck? I'm glad to see you here. But when it comes down to Captain Marvel, I believe if you're going to put art out there, you have to take the criticism, and you have to take that criticism constructively. And that's something I've had to do as a writer, and that's something every other writer has to do out here. Is take that criticism from people, because once you put a project out there, that's what writers do. We put a project out there, we take the criticism, then we move on. I mean, I remember people roasting the book I did, Why 70% of Black Women Are Single. And that book, I got a lot of heat on that book. And Black women were angry at the beginning, but I still let that book stand. I didn't go after people regarding it. I mean, I remember one of these women out here, no, it was a gay man dressed as a woman. They made a video where they were upset about it. And I've also had to take heat from people who weren't too happy about my book, my blog, Why Real Men Avoid Single Mothers. So you just have to take the heat if you put something out there, and you have to deal with it. And that's not something that these people at Disney are allowing to happen. I have not seen Road to Perdition, E-Deck. That's one film I just didn't get to pick up because I was out of work at the time and I didn't have any money. So I didn't get to see that. Rapper 1000 asked, do you think critics like Cisco and Ebro would be allowed to challenge people like Brie Larson on their movies? They should have that right to do that, because as critics, they are just expressing an opinion. And, you know, people like Brie Larson should be able to take criticism. If you go out there and make a film, you know, you should be able to take criticism. What's up, Rob IS? Hey, Chris Brown. Hi, Sketch Stevens. We're talking about Captain Marvel. We're talking about Strong Heroines, and I am rallying to raise funds for my Indiegogo for the ISIS graphic novel based on the new ISIS series book, All That Glitters. And I'm going to leave a link to the script. I hope it goes through. And you guys can take a look at the first 10 pages of that script and see what you're going to get in the story. What graphic novels of the past influenced my writing, E-Deck? Usually I get my inspirations from all sorts of things. It's not just comic books. I get inspirations from all sorts of ideas. And for example, this story, Witches of Eastland, I got the inspiration from this story from the movie The Craft and the 80s show The Facts of Life. And for your Samurai Goddess, I got ideas from Kill Bill and NYPD Blue. And for the book Legendary Mad Matilda, I drew inspiration from the movie Empire Strikes Back, and I also drew inspiration from the song From London After Midnight, Where Good Girls Go to Die, and the Teen Titans run of the Judas Contract. So those were my inspirations and influences. They vary from story to story. Like for All That Glitters, my three inspirations for this book were they were reality shows, YouTube viral videos, and the other inspiration was the everyday story of the superhero, which was the bank robber story. Now, the bank robber story is a story that some comic book writers would consider hokey. However, I thought I could put a fresh take on it for All That Glitters, and that was one of the core reasons why I decided to adapt that story into a comic script, because as I see it, the everyday story of a bank robber is something we have, seen done in a long time, and it's something we have not seen, done because a lot of writers, they're afraid to do it. But I believe it's the kind of story we need to get done, because we need to see how superheroes serve in the community and how they help people out in the community. So that's something that I wanted to see in this story, All That Glitters. And what I wanted to do is give you that all ages story to do in this comic. I wanted to make this an all ages family comic because I want people to get into comics, and the easy way to do that is to give them a family-friendly, all-ages story. Now, every story in the ISIS series, it has its own beginning, middle, and end. So I thought that we could just do this as a single volume, and it would just be a fun book, and it would be something everybody would want to enjoy. Let me see. Shrek's Manifest says that women view criticism as sexism when it's towards them, but that's not what it is. Just that women cannot take criticism. Some of them have very thin skins, and they don't understand that criticism is meant to help you. It's not meant to hurt you. And because women are emotional, they don't know how to deal with constructive criticism. But if you're in the arts or any sort of creative medium, you have to learn how to take criticism. I'm waiting for them to get back to me, Rob IS, on the Judge General Brown podcast. And when they get back to me, I will post the podcast on my YouTube channel. Am I into anime? Not really. I haven't seen too many of them. But if I see one, I might try to take a look at them, but my schedule's just been so busy. Thank you in advance, Sketch Stevens. I'm hoping that we can all get this project funded, and thank you for your support in advance. What's up, Luciano? Not really a Tarantino fan, but I did watch Pulp Fiction back in the day, and that had some influence on my writing. And some of his films they're very unique. I like the way he does dialogue. I also like the way he does stories. I like the way he does twists and turns. And I like the way he does his characters, because he just makes these low-life, degenerate people, but what he does is he humanizes them. And that's what makes you really care about Tarantino characters. I mean, I remember watching Pulp Fiction, and that's a very, very compelling film, because all these low-life people, but then you see them as human. Luciano, Man Crisis is $18 in paperback, and that's a book that, if it was the best $18 you'll ever spend, that's what people have been telling me, that it's a book that has transformed people's lives. And after they spend that $18, they wind up with their lives changed. But if you want to get the ebook, you can get it for $6.99. When you start reading my books, I would recommend that you start out EDEC with Temptation of John Haynes. That book usually is one that everybody enjoys. It's the start of the SJS Direct universe. It lays the foundation for just about everything. That's one that I recommend everybody start with, but you can start with any book that you want. But this was the one that ushered in everything. So I'll leave a link to that one if I can. And that's a book that I recommend that you start with. I also recommend that you start with trying to go through them. Amari's Revenge, that one is the entry point for the ISIS series. So if you want to see how the ISIS series starts, you can start with Amari's Revenge as well. Oh, it's not letting me go do that again. So, but those are two of them. But you can start with any one that you want. Looks like we have some trolls. Yeah, they did do that Trex manifest. They hyped up Black Panther to be the new face of Marvel, but then shift the focus to Captain Marvel, and that was a mistake. But that was done, I believe, because it was a racist thing. They didn't like the idea of a heterosexual black man being the leader of the MCU, and that made a lot of these corporate heads uncomfortable. So they decided to make a white woman the face of the MCU, and that's not really working out the way they thought it would. So I have not messaged the Booker on Joe Rogan yet, but if they contact me, I would get in touch with them. And what I found a surprise was Joe Brown actually likes my YouTube channel. I was just talking to his people. That was a major shock to me. I mean, I didn't think a guy like him would even watch my videos, but he has been watching my videos for some time. Brother Tennessee, I'm trying to deal with the trolls in here, but I need a moderator. I need somebody to moderate. Mickey, Mike, thank you. Thank you very much for following my content. Yeah, they're going to continue to implement SJWs, and that started with Spider-Man Homecoming, and it looks like we have a permanent one with this Captain Marvel. And the whole thing is that, you know, Captain Marvel, it's looking like a disaster. I mean, not box office wise, but the whole thing is they're going to make money on this, but it looks like it's going to be like Last Jedi, where it's a film that really makes people upset enough to not want to get into this film. And that's going to be real devastating to the MCU, because we already had Star Wars messed up, and it looks like, you know, the MCU is having problems because of them trying to shoehorn identity politics into this movie. Now, Yak Diesel asks, if I ever decide to make an ISIS movie, who would I cast? Back in 1999, I always had this vision for the ISIS story, and because a lot of actresses inspired the character, the original ISIS was inspired by Halle Berry, and I wanted her to go up against Sally Richardson Whitfield's E-Steam. Angela Bassett was going to be Queen Isis. Samuel Jackson was going to be Osiris, and I was going to have Shamar Moore as Horus, and Michael Clark Duncan as Anubis. So I had an all-black cast planned for it in my head as I was imagining the story. I imagined it going on like a movie in my head when I wrote the original ISIS, and the original ISIS was inspired by Halle Berry. It was supposed to be Halle Berry versus Sally Richardson, and that was the original imagination. But these days, whenever I write Isis's narration, I usually I imagine her sounding like Tia Mowry. So these days, she sounds like Tia Mowry in my head whenever I write her narration. Oh, it's great that you educated your mama by hypergamy. Okay, see you later, Omio. I'm glad to have you just come here for the stream tonight. Yeah, that's what they always want to do. They always want to emasculate black men and make black women masculine. And well, the whole thing is that people they make themselves out to be victims because that's how they get attention and that's how they get resources. Because when it comes down to the whole victimology narrative, this is how people get attention and approval from white people. For example, when you have with your Kwanzaa right now, he's doing a Kickstarter called White. And what's happening with that Kickstarter is he's got all these people like your Richard C. Meyer and many others on YouTube paying him attention. And he makes this project because he wants to polarize people by using the victim position, talking about the evil white man, because he actually wants the approval of white people. And he wants them to go out here and fund his crowdfunding project. And what he does is he baits them by playing on race. And what happens is, this is what a lot of these people do. They want to play the victim card in order to get crumbs for the master's table, and they don't want to earn things on merit. Now, with the ISIS graphic novel Indiegogo, what I want to do is show that a heroine's story can sell based on merit, and that it's possible to do a great story featuring a strong heroine just based on the merits of the story, because I oftentimes win over people based on merit whenever I do novels like Spinsterella, Spellbound, The Legendary Mad Matilda, and The Thetas, which feature strong heroines. And those stories win over readers just based on the content of the character. And that's what makes them very compelling to the readers. That's what people want to see in a heroine. And that's what I want to give readers with this Indiegogo, is I want to give them that example of how to tell a great story with heroines. Because when I look at comics like your Unstoppable Wasp, your Captain Marvel, your Kamala Khan, Ms. Marvel, and your Squirrel Girl, I see them keeping to try to push this whole feminist narrative. And what happens is people just aren't buying it, and that's hurting the overall industry. And what I want to do is introduce a fresh model to readers with this Indiegogo, just like I have introduced it in many of my trade books, like the ISIS series, the E-Steam series, and my novels like the Thetas and the books of the Spinsterella trilogy. So I have a story model that I want to bring to the industry. And I want to show that it's possible to do this, because it's working for me. I make great stories with heroines, and what I see is what they're doing wrong at Marvel and DC. I see what they're doing wrong, and I want to show that there's a way to do this. And again, when you're writing a heroine, you want to make her somebody who is a friend to the reader, and you want to make her a woman that other women want to be friends with, and you want to make her the kind of woman that guys want to date or guys want to marry, because guys want to spend time with this person, and if they want to spend time with that person, they're going to want to spend money reading their adventures. It's just as simple as that, and that's how you sell books to readers. You want to make this person so likable and so much of a friend to people that people are actually looking forward to spending time with that person when their new book comes out. And whenever I write a book, especially an E-Steam series book, people have been looking forward to it, because the most recent E-Steam series book that I did before this one, The Sands of Time, that one, people loved that book and they loved that story. They loved the action, the adventure, and the romance that was featured in Sands of Time. And they were actually sharing it. And the other book they liked about E-Steam was, see if I can find it. Okay. They also liked Little Girl Lost. They liked it because the Devilish Diva, even though she was a diva, they liked her because she was somebody looking to help people out in the community. She was looking to help this lost little girl find her way home. And they liked her because she was just a genuinely nice person. So with that story, again, I was using the Lois Lane model, which many people in the industry thought wouldn't work, but it works well for me. And again, whenever I think of writing heroines, I think about writing someone who is a friend, someone who is a girl next door, somebody you want to spend time with. And because I think that way, what happens is readers want to go out here and hang out with this character, and they want to read their whole story all the way up to the end. And then they want to go pick up the other books, like in the case, for example, with the Spinsterella trilogy. They'll pick up Spellbound, then they'll pick up Legendary Mad Matilda, and they'll pick up Spinsterella because they like this character. This character is a friend to them, and they want to continue spending time with that friend, and then they want to spend money continuing to read their adventures. Unfortunately, when it comes down to the SJW characters that I've read, like the ones I've read at Vertigo and many of these other companies, they really don't give you that friend that you want to spend time with. They give you this obnoxious person, this narcissistic person. And if you have to spend time with an abrasive, difficult, rude person, you're not going to want to spend money reading their book. Luciano makes a statement, I should do a book called How to Stop Being a Victim. I already did that one. It's called The Man Crisis. And I also did it one on that called Stop Simping, because if you read Stop Simping and Manginas and Misadventures of Captain Saberho and the Man Crisis, you will learn how to stop being a victim and learn how to start being a survivor. Thank you, 702 Jeffrey. I made the one about Oprah because I wanted people to understand how dangerous this woman is and how dangerous she is to everyone. I don't know if Judge Joe Brown read The Man Crisis. I know he watched my videos, but I don't know if he's read The Man Crisis yet. But we were talking on the show, and we agree on a lot of things in that hour we were talking. Yeah, I had a victim mentality back when I was a kid, back in the day, because a lot of people, they wanted to make me into a victim, but my mother wouldn't let me be a victim. I wouldn't let myself be a victim, because as I see it, one of the worst things you can ever do is put yourself in a victimized mindset, because when you do that, you're allowing other people to tell you who you are, and you're allowing other people to define who you are, and you're allowing people to put you in a box. And the worst thing you could ever do is put yourself in that box, because what happens is you're going to wind up limiting yourself. Now, when I was 7 years old, I had this brain aneurysm, and this was something that could have possibly killed me, or it could have possibly made me into a vegetable. But thank God I was able to survive. But when I went to school, people thought I was slow. They thought I was handicapped, and they thought that I was very limited. But I didn't. My mother wouldn't let me be a victim. I wouldn't let myself be a victim, and I went on after junior high school to become on the honor roll when I changed from Park West to Taft High School, and I then graduated at the top of my class in my college. So I didn't let myself be a victim. Instead, I took the tragedy and decided to overcome it and try to do the very best that I could in spite of the tragedy that befell me at 7 years old. Here I am at 45, and I'm not letting this thing hold me back. And you should never let anything hold you back, because the victim position, as I've grown up as a teenager and a young adult, it is a powerless position. And when you are in a powerless position, again, people are dictating to you, and you never get to grow to actualize your potential. And what I want to do to actualize my potential is go out here and do something I wanted to do ever since I was 9 years old. Now, ever since I was 9 years old, I always wanted to do a comic book. And that's one of the other reasons why I'm doing this ISIS graphic novel, Indiegogo, is because this was something I wanted to do ever since I was 9 years old. So I loved comics back then. I couldn't draw back then, so I started writing in order to create the pictures. And when I did that, I started to learn. I became a writer, and I wanted to publish a book. And then I went out and did that. And now I want to go out here and finally give people that comic book that I always wanted to create ever since I was 9 years old. So that's one of the other reasons why I'm doing the Indiegogo is when you have a goal, I always wanted to write comics ever since I was a teenager. And since the companies won't let me do it, I figure I'll go out here and try to do it myself. And as I'm trying to do it, I want to give people that story featuring that strong heroine that people have always, like Disney said that they want, but they just can't seem to get the formula together on. I don't know, Luciano. I don't know about black people being some of the serious taking people on earth. A lot of people, when it comes down to black folks, they don't really take a lot of things that seriously, and that's why nobody takes them seriously because they never really commit or follow through. And that's a big problem with a lot of black folks. And that's why we have a lot of racial tensions because a lot of people, you have these Uncle Toms and these other people who don't take the issues seriously, and they think they can pander to people, not understanding when you pander, you come from a position of weakness, and the only way to get respect from people is to come from a position of strength. Unfortunately, most black people, they want to come from that position of weakness instead of coming from the position of strength. And you have to come from a position of strength if you want to earn respect from people. And you earn respect from people by not see of others or the approval of others and having the confidence to go out here and be yourself. I don't know, Rapper 1000. I don't know if Al Bundy would ever read The Man Crisis. I just don't know if he would do that. He's a fictional character, but yeah, Edek, I used to watch the Spider-Man cartoon back in the 80s. And I also watched Spider-Man and His Amazing Friends. I used to watch a lot of Marvel Comics cartoons. I used to have them on tape. Unfortunately, as I moved, I had to leave all those tapes behind because it couldn't take all those VHS tapes. Plus, my VCR was wearing down. Yeah, Al Bundy was ahead of his time. Trex Manifest asks, why won't black women demonize the black pastor? Well, that's because they have a covert contract with the black pastor. He lets them get away with stuff, and then he can get away with stuff. So they have a covert contract, and that's why they won't go after him. They're thinking he'll give them a pass. Sketch, yeah, Motown should have kept making movies like The Last Dragon, but I think that they didn't make enough money on The Last Dragon. I mean, over time, Last Dragon has really aged extremely well, and it was one of those incredibly positive films when you watch Last Dragon. I have it on DVD. It's a film that aged beautifully, and the story is really positive. I wish Berry Gordy had stayed in the film business, but I guess he lost so much money with The Wiz and The Last Dragon that he just got discouraged. But he had a great artistic style. Yes, I did know that there was an ancient goddess Isis, and that was one of the things that inspired the Isis character. So I knew all about the Egyptian gods and what they call the Heliopolitan gods. When I was creating Isis, I did extensive research on them, and that's where I got the basis for the story, because the goddess next door is a descendant of the Heliopolitan gods. A lot of blacks in other countries, I've talked to a lot of people in the UK and other countries, I guess they're down to earth because they don't have to deal with a lot of racism like they do over here. They experience racism, but I guess it's not like we have over here. I don't know. If I was to go travel abroad, I would go to Japan, maybe. That'd be about it, but I have to be very careful. Probably go there and pick up some Transformers, Hot Toys, and maybe a couple of Showa Chigokins, and add them to the Voltrons you see in the back. Gonna talk about, what was I gonna talk about? Oh yeah, I was gonna talk about this Captain Marvel movie, and yeah, the Captain Marvel movie, I think it started off on the wrong foot, and that even got worse as your Brie Larson came along and then started attacking the audience. And when you're trying to market a movie, the last thing you want to do is attack the audience. And when she started talking about white men, that was a major mistake as I see it. One of the worst things she ever did was sit there and talk about how she didn't want white males on her press conference, not understanding she was upsetting her core audience on a movie that already had a very weak teaser, a very weak trailer, and just wasn't strong enough and just wasn't compelling enough to really engage the audience. And now, from what I'm hearing from a lot of the people who have watched the movie, they are again saying what I saw in the trailer, that it was very bland, very boring, and just was not, compelling enough for them. And from what I read in the story, again, they just copped out because they didn't want to see a woman go through any sort of hardship or struggle. And that's, again, something I talked about in the previous live stream about how a lot of writers, they get emotionally attached to characters and then they don't want to go out here and make those characters strong because they get emotionally attached to the woman and then they don't want the woman to suffer any sort of pain. Thank you, Black Sand, for backing the ISIS Indiegogo. Black Sand is the publisher of the Black Sands books, and these books are amazing. I bought this one at the Black Comic Book Festival at the Schomburg Library, and this is a book I highly recommend you pick up. Black Sands is amazing, and I'm glad to have them support the ISIS graphic novel Indiegogo. That means a lot to me, having them come out and support my work, and I'm very happy to have their support. But as for the whole idea of the whole strong heroine thing, what happens is they don't want these characters to go through any sort of character transformation arc, and they don't want them. I haven't gotten the Boys Adrift yet, Luciano, but I will get to it soon. But when it comes down to the strong heroine thing, they don't want the characters to go through any sort of pain or hardship, and that prevents those characters from really growing and changing and developing and becoming the kind of hero that people can relate to. Now, whenever I do heroines, I'm not afraid to let them fall down. I'm not afraid to let them get beat up. I'm not afraid to let them lose, because I know that the audience has to learn from these characters, and they have to see these characters go through this hardship in order for them to learn the lessons that are going to be presented in the story. For example, in the first couple of chapters of Spellbound, the Matilda Crowley character, I have her get beat up in the bathroom of her high school. I mean, the bullies slap her, they stomp on her, they cut up her jacket, and she goes through this in that story in order to show how she has this internal strength of character, even though she is being bullied. And she also goes through tragedy where she sees her brother get shot by a drug dealer, and she goes through all sorts of pain and hardship. And that's what makes the character compelling, and that's what makes us want to, really like that character. And from what readers have been telling me, they love the Matilda Crowley character. And again, they love her because of what she is going through. And they see her go through that in Spellbound. They saw her go through that in Legendary Mad Matilda, where she wound up getting arrested at her rave that went wrong, and she had her entire life completely derailed. But what made the character relatable was the fact that even though she fell down, she got back up. And that was a thing that I put in my novel, The Thetas, where I talk about what makes a lady a lady is not how she falls down, it's about how she gets back up. And I even put that line on the back of the Legendary Mad Matilda. It's not how she falls. And that was a key theme in the book, because Matilda Crowley falls hard in Legendary Mad Matilda, and she really goes through a lot. So That's something we don't get to see heroines go through, and we don't get to see them, really dealing with a loss. And that was one of the things that I did not see in a lot of these so-called SJW comics, like your Unstoppable Wasp, where in 2 issues, she had to deal with this loss she took from these villains. And instead of her navigating through her emotions and dealing with that loss, we see your Nadia Pym having a meltdown and then beat up her friends, go shrink in her lab, and then we have people making excuses for her by saying that, oh, she's bipolar, but not letting this character, really cope with stuff the way I let the Matilda Crowley character cope with a loss in Legendary Mad Matilda, or the way I have Isis cope with the loss in the fight with Goldenshine, where she has to realize that there is more to this thing than herself. And in the story, she realizes that even though she lost the fight, she still has to go out here because she has a responsibility to protect others, and she has to look out for others other than herself. So in the story, it's about, the everyday superhero being out here. Isis, the goddess next door, she's taking on this bikini-clad bank robber. And as she's taking on this bikini-clad bank robber, she suffers this loss, and then she has to navigate through her emotions and go back out there and really show that she has the strength of character to do what is right, even in spite of her feelings and reservations. So this is what I'm putting in the story for this comic, because when I look at many of these SJW comics, like your Captain Marvel, they are not really giving you a story about being a strong heroine. They're not giving you a story about seeing a heroine, deal with loss, dealing with failure, dealing with hardship, or dealing with the things that will enable them to grow, because too many writers cop out whenever they do stories with women because they want to go out of their way to protect women. And that's something I want to put in my work. Rob, yes, I did enjoy the Wonder Woman movie. It was very well done. Patty Jenkins did an amazing job on that film, and it was rock solid, except for the last 15 minutes, which was just a mess. But the film was one of the best superheroine films I've seen in a while. What's up, Born Savior? Glad to see you here in the live stream. We are talking about Captain Marvel, Strong Heroines, and I am raising funds to pay for the ISIS Indiegogo because I want to publish the first comic book under the SJS Direct imprint, and I want to launch the first ISIS graphic novel to share this all-ages family story with my readers. And I'm going to leave a link again in the chat so that everybody can help me get this Indiegogo out here. This is something I'm trying to fund, and I have 8 backers now at $175, and I'm trying to raise $25,000 to get this project funded. And again, I'm going to go down the costs once again, and those costs are $9,300 for Bill Walko to pencil and ink all 62 pages of the ISIS graphic novel, which will feature 2 stories. ISIS All That Glitters, which will be the main feature. Esteem No Good Deed, which will be the second feature of the book. And to hire a colorist, which will be $5,000 or $80 to $100 a page. Hire a letterer at $3,100, and then to pay for the printing and shipping costs for the entire Indiegogo, getting the books out to everyone. And that's going to be the overall cost of the project on the Indiegogo. Hi, George Rogers. Right now, we are at 8 backers, and I'm hoping to get more backers on this project. I wish it could be as big as Diversity in Comics Jawbreakers or Ethan Van Sciver's Indie Cyberfrog, and I believe we could get that if we can get the word out. And that's why I'm rallying this today, because today is International Women's Day. It's the last hour of International Women's Day. Oh, thank you. You're not the Black Sands publisher, but thank you again. Again, I really appreciate it. Appreciate you paying, donating to Super Chat, and I appreciate you coming in. I thought you were, but still, I'm glad that you are here. It's International Women's Day, and I believe we can make a powerful statement today about the type of heroine we want, and that's one of the reasons why I'm doing the Indiegogo, because we have this International Women's Day, we have this Captain Marvel movie coming out, and many comic fans, they have complained about Captain Marvel. They've complained about these so-called SJW heroes. So I'm offering them and everyone an alternative with the ISIS graphic novel. I'm offering a story that I believe readers will enjoy, a story that is free of identity politics and free of narratives that are negative, as I see it. Don't give readers an entertaining story, because whenever I write a story, it's all about giving the reader a fun story, a character who's a friend, a character who's fun, a character you want to spend time with, and a character whose books you look forward to. So that's what I want to give readers with this Indiegogo, because when I looked at what they did with Captain Marvel, there's a reason why this book continues to fail. And again, it's because they don't have the strength of character to admit that this model for storytelling they are presenting just doesn't work, and that the definition of insanity, as I see it, is doing the exact same thing and expecting a different result. So making the same story over and over again, rebooting the same character, that doesn't really work very well. So I want to do something different, and that's something I want to do, is offer people an alternative. I want to offer them something fun, and I want to offer them something, again, that they feel comfortable about giving their kids to. It was deliberately staged, G. Woodward, launching Captain Marvel on International Women's Day. What they wanted to do was capitalize on all the feminist audiences they thought were out there. But what they're seeing is not that many feminists out there who buy these books. And that's another thing with SJWs. They think that there's an audience out there of them out there, but the audience is smaller than you think. I don't know if I'll be able to make a video about Terry Crews. Right now, I'm kind of backed up. There's an R. Kelly one I wanted to do, but I may not be able to do that one until Monday. So, but that's what they thought. Feminists were going to come out to this movie in droves. They thought they were going to make it like Black Panther. And again, that just shows the racism of white feminists, because they have a major envy of Black people. When it comes down to feminists, when we look at Black Panther was a major phenomenon, and because they were upset, they wanted to make Captain Marvel a phenomenon, just like Black Panther. Unfortunately, it just didn't become a phenomenon. But what they didn't understand was Black people were so starved for a film featuring their own image that they wanted to go out here and support Black Panther, because this was the first feature film featuring a Black superhero in a lead. And this was something that everybody wanted to get behind. And moreover, it was a Black superhero created by white people. So a lot of Black people wanted to get behind it, because it felt like they were being validated by white people and getting the approval of white people. So they really wanted to get behind that movie. So I see what they're trying to do, and but that's what they wanted to do, and that's why they made Black. That's why people were going out to see Black Panther, because we really hadn't seen a Black hero in a lead role since Blade, and Blade was the character who revived the entire superhero genre. So when it comes down to that, that's why people were coming out for Black Panther, and that's why we had a complete sellout of the toys in the toy stores. I remember when they had Black Panther, people were buying the toys like crazy. People were buying the figures like crazy. It was just they were just completely sold out. So what they want to do is have that type of phenomenon with Captain Marvel. Excuse me. But, we already had that with Wonder Woman, and Wonder Woman was that way because Wonder Woman was an American icon. She was the first white superheroine, and she was one of the most popular superheroines. So you have Marvel trying to turn this obscure character into a more popular one, and it just doesn't seem to be working. What I see is you're going to see a lot of merchandise on clearance like Star Wars, and like with these Rose Ticos we see and these other characters, and that's what's going to happen with this Captain Marvel merchandise, because it just doesn't appeal to women, and it doesn't tell the story that women want to read. I don't know about a question film. It might be, that would be interesting. Yes, I have done research on Margaret Sanger, and she is a racist. And yeah. And yeah, black people do read comics, Satanic 69. A lot of black people do read comics. Joe Brown himself was reading comics. He talked about comic books on the podcast, and you'd be surprised how many people have read comics in the past. And he was annoyed with the way they changed Captain Marvel, and I was annoyed with the way they changed Marvel and just erased him from his own story in this Captain Marvel movie. And that's something that turned off a lot of people, and I just was really disgusted when I read that, because I've read the old school Captain Marvel, and they just straight up erased him out of his own history and out of his own continuity in this movie. And that's not a way you're going to win over old school comic fans. You're not going to win over old school comic fans like myself, who remember Marvel and Marvel's story, and they just take his story and they gender swap it. And that's a major insult to all of those comic fans who went out here and spent money out here to buy these books. Yes, Susan B. Anthony is a racist, and she's always been a racist. I mean, that's a historical fact. All those suffragists were white supremacists. I don't know. Was the Black G.I. Joe? I think he was. The Action Soldier, I think he was the first black action figure. I don't know about lesbians, but all I know is a lot of feminists, they have a lot of contempt for black people, and they have a contempt for black men because that's the way a lot of them felt. Trex Manifest, that's a very good question. Yeah, it is ridiculous that people think reading comic books equates to acting white. It's something I ran into high school myself. I ran into that a lot. And when you have comic books, a lot of people think that it's acting white, but it's not, because comic books are something everybody enjoys. And a lot of black kids, they catch a lot of heat just because they like comic books. And I don't think that's right, because again, I've been reading comics since I was 4 years old, back in 1978. That was the way I learned how to read. And it was not about acting white. It was just a part of my childhood and part of my life. And yeah, they think anything is acting white, but that's being normal. And everybody has read comics. Everybody is into that thing. But, you have black folks who buy into this street culture, and they don't understand that comic books are a part of the community. They're a part of everybody's life. I mean, it's an American pastime. It's America's mythology, as I see it. And Black Santa, I have to disagree. I agree with you on it. Women don't. I have to agree with you that women don't like other women, but they do like heroines in the story. And the whole thing with heroines is they have to identify with the heroine in order to like them. And when they identify with the heroine, usually that's when they'll start buying their stories. For example, I did a story called All About Nikki, about this rich black girl from Beverly Hills who tends to have a mouth that she tends to run and make mistakes. And women love that character. Same thing with Eastine. when you make a character that has traits that they can relate to and identify with, usually women will like that character and they will start buying their stories. George, I'm 45. I'm an old man. I don't know about Eject. I don't know about the Wu-Tang Clan. I know that they did do a song about Tony Stark. But yeah, there are lots of comic fans out there. 39, I passed that way a long time ago. I'm 45. It's been Yeah, that's the type of character I make with Matilda and Isis and Eaststeam. I make the heroine who fights like a man in some ways, but they tend to have their own style. Isis has her own martial arts style, Eaststeam has her own style, and Matilda has her own style of doing things, but they all have character faults and flaws. So they have a fighting style, but then they have a story model that plays to the strengths of women. And that's one of the things I put in all my stories is a story model that plays to the strengths of women and female paradigms as life, because when it comes down to women, they are different from men. And that's something that many of your comic pros today have a problem with, is not understanding that women are different than men. So you have to apply a completely different story model to them. So whenever I write heroines, I apply a completely different story model where I'm playing towards the internal traits of the character and showing how the character is internally strong, because that's what many men and women find attractive about women, because men want a woman who has internal character traits that show how she has the strength of character to stand, because they want that strong moral position, because if that woman has a strong moral position, she will be able to set a course for the family, and she'll be able to teach the culture to the children. So that's something I put in my characters, is a focus on the internal character traits. And that's something that I don't see being put in characters like Captain Marvel, where they're trying to show them competing with men, but women don't compete with men. Women complement men. And that's something I do in many of my stories. Like, for example, with Eaststeam, The Sands of Time, I show how Princess Eaststeam is making efforts to try to help John Haynes get back to his time. And later on, when Temptation of John Haynes, we see Eaststeam trying to save John's life and try to keep Lucifer from taking his life. So whenever it comes down to women, you want to show how this woman is going to be a complement to the men, and how she's going to have be somebody that can be a partner. And girls want to see that, because a lot of girls want to get those traits that show that they're going to make a great girlfriend or a great boyfriend or a great wife, and they want to see that in these characters. So that's something they want to see, but they don't get to see in characters like your Captain Marvels or any of these other characters, because they're all about trying to show a woman is strong from a masculine perspective, instead of trying to show what is strong about being feminine and what's beautiful about being feminine. Now, in my stories, I try to show what's beautiful and strong about being feminine and what makes being a woman attractive. And I wanted to bring that over to my comic books as well. So if I can get this Indiegogo funded, you're going to see that in this comic book as well. I mean, there may be a couple of cheesecake panels, so you may get some of that too. Trex Manifest asks, it's not strange to me that they always give the token characters more prominence, because they don't want to really focus on black characters of substance. I have not seen the Dark Phoenix trailer, Patrick Smith. And I think, yeah, Wu-Tang comes from New York. Yeah, Joe Brown said that. He said that feminists are angry about being feminine, and I have to agree with them. A lot of them hate their femininity. They want to focus on masculinity. I did like Buck Rogers, and I do watch it on MeTV. It's a fun show. I never got to see it as a kid, but I get to see it now. Yeah, that's right. Finn was supposed to be like Han Solo, but Kathleen Kennedy turned him into a minstrel. He turned him into a butler. Um, what makes a strong woman a leader is her ability to have the strength of character internally. And whenever I do stories, it's about women leading other women, not women trying to lead men or trying to take the man's position. Um, I have not read any Western comics recently. I mean, I read Rawhide Kid back in '87 once, but that was about it. Um, they haven't made a Western in a while, as far as I see. So, oh, I don't know about Thatcher, but I'll have to check that comic count. That's true. One of the reasons why I wrote Bride of Dracula and Escape from Transylvania was because I was tired of watching the horror movies where the black character wound up dying in the first 10 minutes. In both of these stories, the black characters make it all the way to the end. So that was one of the reasons why I wrote these two stories. And Night of the Vampires was to show that a black character could survive to the end of a horror movie. So that's why I wrote these three stories, because when it comes down to horror stories, they don't really show the black character surviving. Usually the black character dies in the first 10 minutes and then the movie is over. Um, yeah, Will Smith as a genie, that's just a minstrel. That's another minstrel role. Will Smith is being played for a joke, and what's really sad is he thinks he's going up in the world when he's actually going down and being turned into a joke. It's clear to me Will Smith is in a decline of his career, and he doesn't know where he is right now. He needs to really set a direction for his career at this point, and he needs to find a point where he can take things on and put it back on course. Oh, that one takes me back. Friday the 13th, Part 5. That's the only one. But black characters don't usually do well in these horror movies. But that's one of the reasons, again, why I wrote Isis Bride of Dracula, Night of the Vampires, and Escape from Transylvania, was to show you that a black character could survive by the end of the movie. I mean, that could be one of the reasons why they panned Predator 2. I mean, he did beat the Predator and he did win, and Gary Busey got sliced in half. It's been a long time since I saw that movie. Yeah, it's just Lion King is a redundancy, and the whole thing is that Disney just shows how it's out of ideas when they could just go out here and get some new ideas. And I have not seen Clue, and I have not seen Clue, so I have to take a look at that one, Rapper 1000. You tell me about films that came out when I was a kid, but I never got a chance to even take a look at, so I have to take a look at that one. Yeah, the last good Will Smith movie was I Am Legend. Yeah. Okay. But when it comes down to these Captain Marvel movie, I don't know. I read the synopsis and it wasn't strong enough for me. I don't know why Robot. Yeah, that's why they're making them. But the whole thing is, there's lots of ideas out there, Paul. But what the problem is that the studios don't want to pay for them. So, in order to get a new idea, they have to actually spend money on a script, and the studios just don't want to spend that money on a script. So, That's why we're seeing these rehashes, like this Rush Hour reboot with women. And that's why we're seeing these constant remakes, is because Hollywood, they are afraid. There's a lot of betas running Hollywood. They're afraid of taking risks. They're afraid of taking on new challenges. And they're afraid of failing. And if there was a male heroine, who would I pick to be? I think they should have just went with Black Widow, because she was organically inside of the MCU, and they should have just made a movie around her, but then they couldn't have fit her into Infinity War. And that was the big problem, was they needed this cosmic hero to tie in when they had nobody to fit in. And I believe, again, they should have just went with Infinity War, then your Spider-Man Far From Home, and then gone into the Black Widow movie, and then have Black Panther then come in to start continuing Phase 4 as the head of it. I have not seen that Rise of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. I'm just not happy with the story of it. I don't know about Michael Jai White as Blade. Yeah, they did change Captain Marvel into a female for the Captain Marvel movie, and I'm not happy about that at all. It just shows how they were all about identity politics and how they wanted to push their feminist narrative. Female Terminator is coming in November, and don't give them any ideas about Beverly Hills Cop. I really don't want to see them mess that movie up. But Black Panther has already proven that he can carry the MCU, and he should have been the head of the MCU. And I feel that that was racist to take that from him, because he's already shown that he can open a movie, carry a movie, and that your Chadwick Boseman can carry the MCU. But the whole thing is they wanted to go out here and make Captain Marvel the head of the thing. But it was just a huge mistake as I see it. I have seen Vampire in Brooklyn, and that was one of those influences on me, along with Buffy the Vampire Slayer, for the Vampire Saga and the ISIS series EDEC. And it's a movie that could have been better. I mean, I saw what Eddie Murphy was trying to do, but it just didn't really come together to be a solid film. That's another problem, D. Woodward. They don't want people to be fresh and creative. Studio heads want to be able to push agendas. And the reason why they want to push agendas is because they want stories to fit their narrative, and they want to be able to program ideas in people. So they don't want people to come out here and watch this film and just be entertained. What they want to do is make you think a certain way, like what they want to do with these so-called documentaries. So they want you to think a certain way. I have not seen Candyman. I mean, again, that was during one of my broke periods, so I didn't get a chance to see it. So, gonna get ready to wrap this stream up in about 10 minutes, but I think, again, when it comes down to strong heroines, again, we need a different model. And again, I'm trying to create a different model, something I believe that readers would enjoy, because most of the people who have picked up my heroine stories, like the ISIS series, the Eastern series, Spinsterella's trilogy, and even my other novels like the Thetas, and even my oldest books, A Recipe for Success, they like the heroines I make in my stories. So I believe it's time for a different model, a different approach. And again, that's what I want to present in this graphic novel for this Indiegogo, which I launched this week again, because with it being the launch of Captain Marvel and it being International Women's Day, I wanted to be able to say, I have an alternative to what everybody has been complaining about regarding these SJW comics. And I have a story model, I believe, that would be a lot more compelling than what was presented in many of these SJW comics. Something that's a little bit more traditional, but allows us to see what makes women strong, what makes women beautiful, and what appeals, as I see it, to men and women, and also shows us what's great about being a heroine. So that's what I want to present in the All That Glitters. Let's see, find it. The All That Glitters story that's in paperback right now and coming to ebook at the end of March. And it's what I want to present to people around the end of the year with the graphic novel, which will feature some awesome art by Bill Walker, because Bill did an amazing job on this cover, and I want to see him make a spectacular comic, because I believe he can make a spectacular comic, and that's what I want to share with my readers with this Indiegogo. I want to be able to give you guys a really great comic, and I really want to give you the kind of comic I used to pick up on the racks back when I was going to the grocery store and at the comic shops when I used to go to Forbidden Planet back in the day, when I was collecting back in the late 80s, because I used to get on a train and go to 14th Street and go to Forbidden Planet. And I want to give you that kind of comic and that kind of experience. And I want to give you that kind of fun with this Isis All That Glitters when I make the graphic novel. I'm hoping we can get this out. I'm hoping we can get this complete, because that's something I would really love to share with you, like I've shared the Isis series over the last 5 years. So that's something I really want to do. And it's something I would really enjoy sharing with you guys. Paul, I would love to do an Isis animated series. I mean, if Netflix would let me do it, I would do it with Netflix. I don't know if it'd be binge worthy, but I would love to do it with Netflix. I don't know. I mean, that's one. I don't want to deal with Hollywood. I'd rather deal with an independent one, Rapper 1000, because when it comes down to Hollywood, they would just butcher it. But I don't know about Netflix. I know that Netflix, as of late, they have been pushing a lot of far left stuff. But I don't know. I would rather deal with an independent platform than deal with another one, because when it comes down to Hollywood, they will rewrite stuff. Trex Manifest, I'm glad that you liked my video, Unwritten Rules for Black Men, but I did that because I want a lot of guys out there to learn those unwritten rules, because they can be the difference between life and death. And the reason why I did that video, Unwritten Social Rules, was because and when I had the job at City College, I ran into situations where I didn't know the unwritten social rules. So I want guys to know them so that they can come out here and not get jammed up like I got jammed up 10 years ago. So that's one of the reasons why I made that video. And I'm glad you enjoyed that one. I did a lot of men's issues videos like that. I did one called Survival Tips for Black Men in the Workplace. And I do a whole bunch of them. So you can search them out and you'll learn some different things, how to survive out here. And I also put that in my books like Stop Simping and The Man Crisis, because I really want guys to have the information they need, because a lot of boys, they're growing up without fathers and they're growing up without family. And I believe that they need another man there, because one of the problems we have is that men are not teaching boys to be men, and they're not helping women learn how to be the type of women who can become wives. So that's why I share that information with people in those type of videos, because I really care and I want people to be able to go out here and be able to survive. Because one of the things they're not getting, a lot of people buy kids material stuff, but they won't give them intangible things, and it's those intangibles that they get that are going to help them be able to grow. So that's what I want to give people, and I'm going to get ready to wrap this stream up. I thank everybody for being here. I thank everybody for coming out to the stream, and I'm hoping that everybody comes out and supports the Indiegogo, because without your help, I won't be able to get this comic published. And I'm hoping you guys come out for Isis All That Glitters when it's released at the end of the month. So it's going to be available on Kindle. The prose version of this will be of All That Glitters will be available in the end of it's available now, but the Kindle version will be available at the end of the month on Kindle Unlimited. and the new E-Steam book for the year 2019, Goddess of, where the devilish diva takes on the demonic dominatrix. That will be available in April. Thank you for coming to the stream, and thank you for supporting my work. And thank you again, Satanics, for picking up The Man Crisis, which is also available on Amazon.com right now. Thank you all for coming to the stream, and good night.